Introduce yourself again.
Yeah, my name's Aaron Califato. I'm an actor and a storyteller, and I've created a solo play called For Profit that I'm taking on a year-long tour.
Putting on this one man show.
Yeah, it's a solo performance,
Okay.
sort of in the vein of I'm not sure if you like Eric Bogosian or Mike
Okay.
Daisy or Spalding Gray or even John Leguizamo in his early work, where
Okay.
you have one person taking on a number of different characters and telling a interesting narrative.
Okay. So, what is your play is called For Profit? What is that about?
Well, the play is actually based on my year working at a for-profit educational institution, and so on the surface, it sounds kind of like what, like snooze fest. But honestly, for me, I got into this position. I had transitioned cities, and myself and my wife were just like millions of Americans, kind of were. Let's say our lives were defined by our student loan debt, and specifically my student loan debt. I'm a lot luckier than a lot of people, but both my wife and I went to public school, I should say state schools, and they were at the time very inexpensive compared to other schools. We both had part-time jobs. We
Hmm.
both had partial scholarships. So and we both worked in the summer every year. And even then, we still came out with a significant amount of debt. So much so that, our monthly payments sort of dictated that we had to look for jobs outside of our profession or outside of our interest, which
Hmm.
is fine. But at the same time, it's sort of it's more than just define that. It kind of determined where we could be regionally. We had to take, and it's not just us; it's a lot of other people. So that was my introduction to it. So I ended up taking this job
Hmm.
after looking for months and months, and I was offered a job at a for-profit educational institution. I said yes because it offered me health insurance for the first time. I was an artist,
Hmm.
and I was steadily working for 3 years. But when we moved cities, I was based in Cleveland. I didn't have any theater networks here. It takes time to build that stuff. So,
Hmm.
and the bills and the student loan lenders, they don't stop calling. So, I ended up was lucky to have a job. But then when I got into it, it was a jarring experience because I started. It was sort of my gateway. It was my lens into this sort of predatory nature that a lot of private and for-profit schools have. And so I
Hmm.
came in very naive. I thought, okay, I'm a teaching artist as well with theater. So I figured, okay, this will look great on my resume. And, I'll
Hmm.
work at a university. And the word university made me feel good. And I think makes everyone else feel good in conversations,
Hmm.
gives a sense of legitimacy. But again, I was naive. I got into it. I felt that it was it was a bit dangerous. I mean, from the time that I started training until I was there for only a year. Through that whole year, you experience and I experienced a very a dangerous culture where we were enrolling students that maybe shouldn't be in school. We were taking advantage of at-risk youth. We were taking advantage of the neighborhood, which was a disadvantaged neighborhood. We were taking advantage of mentally ill. We were taking advantage of veterans and Title IV funding.
Hmm.
So all this stuff I'm saying, all this rhetoric, I had no idea what that meant. But
Hmm.
through the months of getting that, and being in that situation where you had like a supervisor say, no matter what, you have a number to hit, enroll the student, and then you start realizing, wait a second, my job's not to advise students. My job's to be a screening agent for financial aid so that the university can make its quota.
Hmm.
And so, the whole premise of this thing was I was just jarred and I felt morally responsible. I felt that I had a penance to make because even though I wasn't directly, I think, destroying people's lives, and I think, and every single day wasn't like a dramatic, a life-threatening thing. I thought overall the
Hmm.
system itself was dangerous,
Hmm.
and I thought, wait a second, I had been working in the solo form for a couple of years, and I was commissioned by a few theaters, and I said, why don't I create this work because I wanted to actually tell this story. And again, it was just happenstance, and I decided to do it. And it coincided with me stopping working there. And then
Hmm.
luckily, the play has taken off, and I've had a number of theaters bring me in so we can build the tour. So that was lucky. But the key with the project is that I've sort of combined my experience in documenting what happened there, and then using my medium as a storyteller and an actor to really get this message out and
Hmm.
to sort of spark social conversation.
Fantastic. Um, so basically, this was like an ethical and moral move on your part to get this to spread the word about to warn people about nonprofit education, or I mean,
Well,
for-profit
yeah,
education.
I think honestly, I I try not to make the show, and I don't think it is. And you're right, it was an ethical choice.
Hmm.
Now, mind you, I was there for a year,
Hmm.
so I try not to anyway. I don't want I was born into a Catholic family, so I don't have, I have a bit of Catholic guilt. At the same time, I also don't want to be masochistic with it, where it's like you were terrible. I think
Hmm.
there is a bit of a gray. I think most people, like myself, it was the situation where I had just got this job. I had
Hmm.
no idea what it was about, but I didn't have any options really to say, you know what, right away I don't feel comfortable with this. I'm going to leave and get a job. I think in the '90s, when you could walk outside and get hit with a job,
Right.
you didn't even mean to get a job, and you're like, why am I working at Dairy Queen? Um, During the Clinton years, where it was like, whoa. But then now I think everybody, any
Hmm.
person working in this country realizes that the climate is so much so that even if you get that job, even if
Right.
it's not your field, that you feel lucky to have that income to take care of your responsibilities.
Hmm.
And for me, I was building, as soon as I felt uncomfortable, I was building those outside opportunities. But it took me about a year. Then coincidentally, my work, my art, my training
Hmm.
was the venue and medium that got me out of that.
Hmm.
However, yeah, I mean, the idea for the show really is to spark conversation about this point being,
Hmm.
you know, I think education is a sacred tenet of our country. I'm not a politician. I'm not. I don't mean. And the play doesn't. I don't think come. I'm not a pundit where I'm pointing my finger. But
Right.
I'm saying, look, profit can be a very good thing, and I think the market is a very good thing.
Hmm.
However, I believe that it functions properly when there is a moral line. And I felt that in this particular situation, my story, I couldn't speak for everybody else, but this story,
Hmm.
we were crossing that line, more so pole vaulting over the line.
Hmm.
And I think that the reason why it's timely, and I think the reason why it kind of crosses boundaries, whether it's healthcare or even the general, stagnation of the economy, is
Hmm.
that a lot of our industry and a lot of these organizations who are fighting against this idea of, look, we want there to be jobs, we want there to be competition,
Hmm.
but are we willing to sacrifice, neighborhoods? Are we willing to sacrifice our young our workforce? And
Hmm.
so those are the questions I think that were kind of carbonating inside of me and that come out through the play. So I think for me, and this isn't an easy out to say,
Hmm.
oh, I'm an artist and I start conversations, but I really believe that. I think that this is just a personal thought. I think that
Hmm.
we in this country have lost the respect for process. We want results, we want answers, but we really aren't interested in having critical, thoughtful dialogue and not
Hmm.
beltway dialogue. I
Hmm.
just was in Washington, D.C., not like let's just table it to the next session. I'm talking about real critical dialogue. And I feel that the role of the
Right.
theater, and at least my job, is to have that dialogue. And so far in the short time we've been doing the show, I've noticed that we've had sort of a bipartisan response, so to speak, where
Hmm.
I have people coming to the show who work at for-profit schools, who are deeply conservative, who are absolutely liberal, and can
Hmm.
at least agree that we have a serious issue with not only student loan debt, but with the for-profit sector of education.
Right. Probably just the way that you are putting this message out there in a play, rather than being a pundit on news shows, definitely avoids that political line, like you said. I think.
Yeah,
Um,
I think it makes it just a bit more digestible
uh-huh.
because and this show is funny too. I mean,
Hmm.
and that's not to. It just is. It's a ridiculous. We all been in those situations where it's just you're in these ridiculous situations where you have a corporation. Everyone's kind of. It's a culture thing.
Hmm.
People are not. I don't think there's like an evil doer. There's not like an evil person. I think there's a rhetoric.
Hmm.
There's maybe an organizational stance, and then what happens is I think everyone's fearful of losing their security. They're fearful of not being able to, and that means I think a lot of people make decisions and say, you know what, I'm just going to do my part. I'm not hurting anybody.
Hmm.
But I think if you have enough of those people doing that, I mean, you've seen that in Enron, you've seen that in Wall Street, you've seen that in schools. If you have enough people just saying, I'm just doing my part and I'm not worried about anybody else, then you have this huge organizational
Right.
problem where it's like, whoa, wait a second, this is really unethical. So I think
Right.
it takes people, and I'm not saying like myself, but to use their whatever strength they have, if it's writing, if it's theater, if
Hmm.
it's being on television, whatever it is, to say, to kind of, and not just be a whistleblower,
Hmm.
but to actually start a dialogue to say, is this the path we want to be on?
Right. How can people find out more about what you're doing? Where can they go to get more information? And where are you going to be? You're going to be in Dayton in June. Can you give us the times and dates for that?
Yeah, for the information about the show, I basically set up, an actor page on Facebook.
Hmm.
I just purchased a URL a couple of months ago for the show, so I think in the next 3 months I'll actually have an official website.
Okay.
But but Facebook, so you can just type in my name, whether it's Google or Facebook, and it's Aaron Califato,
Okay.
and that's Sicilian in nature, so there's a lot of vowels. So it's Calafato, Califato. Once you Google that, something will come up,
Okay.
and you can follow the page. And then I'm on Twitter as well, like everyone else.
Okay.
It's at Aaron Califato. So I just post dates and where I'm going to be, and
Mm-hmm.
information about that stuff. Regarding the Dayton show, we're going to be. I believe it is technically called the Occupy Dayton Space.
Okay.
And that is that East Third across from the subway. That's the
Okay.
directions I've been given.
Okay, so it's
Uh,
in the church where they've had other events on East
Correct.
3rd. Okay.
And so they've been gracious enough to say, "Hey, listen, we're going to open up this performance facility,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm going to do the show there." And that's the great thing about the show. I mean, I've done it. We premiered it off Broadway in New York, but I've also done it in an abandoned mall. I've done it.
Mm-hmm.
So the idea of the show is that it's flexible and it's
Uh-huh.
not about the piece or the space having to mold to me.
Mm-hmm.
It's for the show. It's the fact that the show, because it's raw, because it's very tasteful in terms of its setup, that it molds to the space. So yeah, so June 1st, 2nd, and 3rd, and I
Okay.
believe June 1st and 2nd is an 8 o'clock show,
Mm-hmm.
7:30, 8 o'clock, and then the Sunday is a 4:30 show,
Okay.
which is kind of a matinee. But I would say you'd be safe to get there between 7:30 and 8 on Friday and Saturday,
Mm-hmm.
and then 4 o'clock between 4 and 4:30 on Sunday.
Okay, fantastic. Is there anything else that you'd like to say before we go?
Yeah, I mean, I'm excited to be in Dayton. Honestly, I spent a lot of time when I was a kid in Cleveland, Ohio. I left
Okay.
for a number of years, and now I'm based here. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm a Northeast Ohio guy. But I got to tell you, everyone that I've talked to that's helped organize this show,
Mm-hmm.
uh, from the Dayton area has been like so. And I swear to you, I'm not just saying this. Has been incredibly warm,
Okay.
like helpful, open, and I think I'm guessing it's a testament to the people there, the work ethic, the history of the city, and then
Mm-hmm.
transitioning where it's going to go. And I relate to that being a Clevelander, honestly, where
Right.
there's a character and there's almost a charm to the city and the people.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just really thankful for their help, and I'm excited to perform.
Great. Fantastic. Well, thank you for speaking with us today, Aaron.
Thank you, I appreciate it.